Hello, everyone. This is Gary Gomes. I returned to the Aurora Borealis format on the screen. I'm here to talk to you about Vedic astrology, how it relates to you, how it relates to the world, what we can expect for the upcoming weeks and months. I do this broadcast and podcast every week, and I normally do it on Saturdays. This is Saturday, but this week I'd like to go a little bit off topic for the week and talk to you about the Chaitra Shukla, which is essentially the Hindu New Year or the Indian New Year, and is especially used in mundane predictions. So we'll see what's going on. So I'll discuss that for a few minutes, go over that map, then I'll discuss the world map as it is right now. Then I'll go to the individual horoscopes. But we're going to be referring back to this map, which is this astrology chart, a few times over the next couple of weeks, mainly because it's going to be occurring on a very important date. So, without further delay, let me please also let you know that I do take students. Let me know if you prefer this background or if you prefer me in my living room or if you prefer me with another background. And also, if there are any topics you'd like me to cover, I have my own personal preferences. That's what you're seeing on the chart. But I'm open to covering topics you're interested in, as opposed to me. Okay, so let's talk about the New Year event, and also, if you'd like to contact me for a reading or for lessons, I can be contacted at 508 525 0001. Again, I'm going to show the captions. The phone number to contact me at is 508 525 0001. And I can also be reached at Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. So that's GaryGomes G at GMAILD dot, COM. Okay. So you can text me at the phone number that I provided, and it always seems like my nose itches within a few minutes of starting the broadcast. Sorry about that. And let's look at this particular chart. Okay. So this is an interesting chart. So let's see what shows up on the screen. Stop the share. All right, so it looks like we have contact, and I would ask one other thing. My apologies, folks. Put the timer on. All right, hold on a second. I can't put the timer on. Nice, clips. Rats. Okay. All right, so let me get off here, and I'll just do my best to stay on the clock. All right, so let's go back to the screen. And we'll get out of this. All right, hold on a second. All right. This created. All right, 1 second. Let's stop the share for the time being and get back to it. Sorry about that. All right. So, all right. So this is what's called the Chitra Shukla. I'm sorry, Chitra Shukla chart. Is essentially marks the beginning of the new year. It's when Pisces, the moon, and the sun are conjunct in Pisces. As we know right now, if you've been watching the show, essentially this happens on the day of an eclipse. So the eclipse occurs earlier in the day, but actually the day starts during the eclipse cycle. So essentially, what this means is there will be disruption in, so the first house lord in the ninth house does mean a change or an occultation of leadership. Okay, so essentially, I think one of the things we're looking to see will be reversals in fortune, a lot of reversals in fortune. Saturn's aspect in Jupiter and Mercury, so a lot of confused communications, a lot of delays in communications. And also with the first and second lord in the ninth house, this is a puzzling chart, to be honest with you, because we have Venus in its exalted sign, along with the lord of the first and the second house. So this favors those sitting in power. This Venus exalted in the ninth house favors people in power making gains or at least making money. Okay. However, with Rahu Sun conjunction and with the eclipse, this doesn't favor people retaining political positions. So again, as we've been saying for a long time, there are going to be a lot of upsets, a lot of breaks, a lot of changes in administrations. I have seen some recent polling. I don't know how accurate it is, which indicates that France may actually show a change in leadership. That's right now, that's current. But this combination of Saturn in the eighth house aspecting the ninth house lord, aspecting aspecting the ninth house lord, and also, let me get this out of here. and also aspecting the 12th house Lord, which is connected with defeats or delays, and Mercury ruling the third house, in which K2 is present. There will be some general upsets or some changes or shifts. Now, as the year goes on, so this is just the start of the year, but it's starting during a Mercury Mahadasha. Mercury is retrograde, so again, we may end up in a very similar situation to what we saw in 2020 and in 2000, in which it wasn't clear, at least from the initial vote count, as to who won the presidential election or who wins presidential elections in many countries. I can see some more unstable governments. And believe it or not, the United States is relatively stable compared to a lot of governments around the world. We should see some overthrows or even new governments coming in. So this doesn't look good for sitting politicians, except for that Venus exalted in that particular sign. The sun and the moon are together. And so let's see what it looks like for the economy. Venus is exalted. It's in the 9th house. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. Inflationary pressure will continue, though. And I do think, to be honest with you, there will be some kind of a financial panic around April 8th. I don't know how big it'll be. I don't know if it'll be massively earth-changing. I'm actually expecting that more around October, but there'll be rumblings of some kind of financial upheaval around that time. Mars is in the 8th house. I want to look at the house for property because the chart's connected with property, which are the Dassamsha chart. So Mars and Saturn are essentially together in the Dassamsha, in the Chaturtamsha chart. So these are real estate charts. Mars is in the 6th house, along with a retrograde Mercury. And let's see now. Let's go to the 40th divisional chart. Mars is in the 12th house. So we can definitely expect real estate values to go down. That wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but a lot of wealth is built around expectations of real estate acceleration. The other thing is, if we have Rahu in this particular sign, the problem of refugees or immigration continues to be a worldwide problem. There'll be some attention being paid to the domestic cost. It's raising in a lot of countries, mainly because Saturn is aspecting Jupiter, Jupiter's aspecting Libra, and Libra's Lord is exalted. So all of these three are tied together. And Mercury's indicating it's expensive. Essentially the issues connected with immigration are expensive. They're expensive for a lot of companies. In terms of social progressivism, you should see some slap back, but it'll continue. It may even get violent on both sides, to be honest with you. And that's mainly because Venus is located in this house of demonstrations, or of higher knowledge or law. So that will cause some disruption. I do expect to see quite a bit of civil unrest over the year. That's sort of what I've been saying over the past couple of past 6 months or so. I'm even expecting some revolutions to happen in some countries. If we're looking at the ninth house, there'll be a lot of focus on foreign countries, a lot of focus on places like China, Japan, at least for the United States. This is taken from New Bedford. This is taken from the perspective of New Bedford. And also, I think you'll see a lot more problems connected with scandals in government, scandals in, or just inefficiency or rumors. It's interesting that we had the situation develop with Kate Middleton's. This is just a sort of a side note. Kate Middleton, having cancer, and King Charles having cancer at the same time. So there's going to be at least a transition of authority in England relatively soon. If we have K2 in the third house, some damage from earthquakes are indicated. Saturn and Mars are in an air sign. This will continue the pattern of air catastrophes we've seen. I've noticed in previous times when I looked at Saturn in this particular sign that there are a lot of aircraft damages, a lot of accidents in the air. Saturn's not necessarily connected with accidents per se, but Mars is with it right now. It's really close by degree. It's almost right on top of it, and it will be within a couple of weeks. So I would expect some kind of really bad air event within a couple of weeks. I hope I'm wrong. Also, one other thing I do have to say is I think you'll see censorship increase. I think you'll see increasing attempts to control media, and actually media kind of backsliding a bit because of the retrograde Mercury to positions that they held before. So essentially, this Mercury will slide back into Pisces relatively quickly. It only turned retrograde when it entered around April 1st, and it's got about another couple of weeks to go. So it's like right on the brink of going back into debilitated Pisces. So again, be careful with communications, be careful with long-term contracts, real estate deals, things like that, if Mercury's retrograde. There's also a tendency to try to do too much at once, I've noticed, when Mercury's retrograde. So a lot of people are confused. A lot of people are seeking guidance. That's fine. But again, it's not really the absolute best time. It's a good time to get bargains. Mercury retrograde is a great time to get bargains. That's something that a lot of astrologers omit, but it's good for conceptualizing big concepts, but it's not good for detailed work. So I think I'd leave anything that requires detailed work or intensive computer operation until around late April. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is the world map around this chart. So we're going to look at this a little bit early. And let's see if we can get this working properly. Okay. If we look at the Navamsha chart, by the way, if you look at the Navamsha chart, the moon is in Aquarius. So, and the sun and moon are in Aquarius. So that does indicate some kind of change or some kind of impetus to change. It doesn't necessarily mean that anyone's favorite candidate is going to win, or that change as we've known it is going to continue unabated. One of the things about eclipses is they tend to bring, I've noticed, especially with Venus or Jupiter, they tend to bring hidden things to light. So this is going to be connected a lot with financial transactions, with governmental activities, and also with fairness and equity. Who's been treated fairly, who's been treated unfairly. Jupiter is still passing over the Hawaiian Islands. This is, again, like I said, this is an overall map of the coming year. Jupiter is passing over the Hawaiian Islands. That means there'll be some attention focused on what's happening out there. There's a Mars-Saturn line over Washington and Oregon and the region right by San Francisco. So I don't know if there's going to be an earthquake there or some kind of an air catastrophe or something else going on relatively early. Let me zoom that out. And the Venus line is going right over, essentially roughly from North and South Dakota all the way down to Texas and through Mexico. So that'll bring some, and the Rahu line. So essentially this entire belt right here, people are going to be very unhappy. This entire belt right here, people are going to be very unhappy, very unhappy with economics, very unhappy with elected officials. Okay. This also indicates attempts at government control in Louisiana and Mississippi and over into Alabama, and even bad communications happening in Michigan and Illinois, and Indiana and Tennessee, Kentucky, Tennessee, down through Alabama and into looks like Guatemala, I think, or Costa Rica. Costa Rica. There's nothing happening in the East Coast, so a lot of the action in the United States will be over here in this region. The only thing that's happening close to the East Coast is Jupiter, and Jupiter's essentially, so that would tend to bring inflation to this part of the country over near Nova Scotia and near New England, and even to Puerto Rico, and down into Guyana, down into Brazil, down into Bolivia, down into Argentina, and throughout South America. There's a Mars-Saturn line running in the middle of the ocean here. It's not really interacting with any landmass, but it is coming closest to Brazil. So I think you're going to see some economic restriction in Brazil. And Iceland, interestingly enough, Iceland has this Venus line right next to it. That to me means some kind of flooding or some kind of ice issue. Down here we have on the west coast of Africa, near Morocco and near Portugal and near Ireland, we have this Venus line. So we can look at intensive flooding or also government scandals in this entire region. As a matter of fact, all the way from Norway down into down through Algeria and down through Libya, all the way down here. And we also have, so a lot of the European countries are going to be in scandalous situations. Like, so Poland is Italy. So there has been an increasing um, right-wing sentiment in this part of Europe. England looks like it's ready to change governments, but mainly it's because um, the conservative government has been incredibly fragmented. And let's see now. So the next significant line we see is this Jupiter line running through Western Turkey into Saudi Arabia and down through Central Africa and down through South Africa, all the way down. So this Jupiter line to me looks kind of interesting. We did just have that bombing in Moscow, which is close to here. So that'll bring law enforcement down in this part of the world, also maybe in Iran and into United Arab Emirates. But I'm thinking that this part, Saudi Arabia, will actually get richer. They'll have some inflationary pressure. They'll add to the economic problems we're having. Jupiter's getting close to Israel, but not quite there. So there may be some reforms instituted in Israel. I don't know that for sure. Venus line is running right through India. Again, governmental scandal shows up. This is throughout the year now. This isn't just temporary. And this also shows up in Sri Lanka and not Sri Lanka, excuse me. Yeah, but it does show up in Sri Lanka, but in Ladakh and Bangladesh and over into Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, and I think even China will be touched by this. With Jupiter being where it is right now, Jupiter can be a very warlike planet. A lot of astrologers tend to miss that, but essentially, if diplomacy fails, so we're seeing some Jupiter lines over here, so more war over here, and maybe more war over here, or more hostile actions. This is over the entire year. Mars and Saturn, more constriction, devaluation of property. And over here in New Zealand, we have a Venus line running through New Zealand, so maybe some flooding, maybe some landslides. And I'm going to go back to the map for the week. So essentially what I'm looking at is really, again, a lot of the same old in terms of the government, in terms of changes in government, unexpected changes. All right, so this is today. This is where we are right now. And we have a relatively similar map. Although Mercury is debilitated, it's very weak. It's really past this point of maximum debilitation, so it's picking up some strength. Saturn and Venus are, again, really close to each other. And so this will make relationship life difficult for a lot of people. And also, at least from the chart, we have this unexpected imprisonment, or I would say falsification of data, but it's not working really well. Over here, this Rahu-Mercury conjunction. Jupiter in the 9th house, that'll give some optimism for improvement, some range for improvement, but I'm still thinking that we have, I'm just checking the time, that we have Then we have um, then we have some increased focus on prosperity, some increased focus on giving to others. Cases in the second house, this does give some financial worry or anxiety in the chart. And again, some possibility of theft for certain individuals, especially. Um, so let's look at individual signs right now. So let's look at Aries first of all. So a lot of these signs haven't changed since last week, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through these. But we have the first house has Mars in the 11th house, so it's good for gains, good for financial gains, but with a lot of effort. And also, we have to watch out for heavy expenses or silly expenses based upon impatience and trying to do too much at once. Children will be fine, no problem there. Increased possibility of arguments with spouses. This is, again, not a new thing for Aries. But luck overall is good for this particular sign. Financial luck is overall okay for this sign. There is a conjunction between the 9th Lord and the 11th Lord, which can bring in money, but the problem is it flows out as quickly as it flows in. So I think that's a real problem for a lot of people right now, but especially Aries. For Taurus, Taurus has Sun, Mercury, and Rahu in the 11th house, which is, again, good for financial gains. It's the second lord, but you'll be trying to get in too much money all at once, to be honest. And you'll be working very hard in order to do that, too. Jupiter's in the 12th house. There'll be a lot of what I would call needless expenditure for Taurus, especially because of friendships. And the only planet that's really changed radically since last week is Moon. And Moon is in a sign connected with getting money from benefactors or from spiritual institutions or from philanthropic institutions. K2's in the 6th, so this sign has to be, K2's in the 5th, so this sign has to be careful about ignoring children or ignoring younger people or ignoring warning signs, okay, of theft. For Gemini, Gemini has a better chart overall than a lot of other charts right now. The Lord of the first house is in the 10th, so this sign will be going a little bit crazy in terms of health matters, and also, so there is a Mercury Rahu conjunction. You should be aware of any problems connected with lungs and also energy levels. And the moon is in the 2nd house, so this is not a bad combination for financial growth. I'm sorry, the moon's in the 3rd house, so this isn't a bad condition for financial growth. K2's in the 4th house. This will give some detachment or some isolation from siblings or from family members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 9th house has Saturn, Mars, and Venus in it. This is kind of a Dana Yoga or a wealth-producing combination for this particular chart. So it gives luck, gives financial luck, but again, it comes slowly. And finally, we have this combination of gains from work, but again, it'll seem very frustrating. And just when you feel like you're moving ahead, you'll fall back a little bit. So that's just to be expected at this particular time of the year. For Cancer, Cancer has Moon in the 2nd house. So there's a lot of focus in this sign on wealth, on financial growth. And K2 is in the second house. Be careful about family members stealing or borrowing things from you or losing things, okay? That's the main indication of that, excuse me. If we go to Venus as Lord of the third house, along with Mars as Lord of the fourth, and along with Saturn as Lord of the seventh and sixth, it does indicate some issues with not being able to get to money that you've been promised or financial matters that you've been promised. Rahu and Mercury are in the ninth house along with Sun. That's actually a pretty good combination for financial increase. So, especially as the Sun gets stronger after April 15th. Jupiter's in the 10th house of career. So again, good for people who are teaching, good for people who are advising other individuals. For Leo, Leo has Moon in the first house. So there'll be a lot of focus on financial growth and financial gain just because of the sign that Leo's in, but also a worry about spending too much money. K2 is in the second house, can indicate some risk of loss, again, from family members or people being a little bit too greedy. For Cancer, it was more siblings. For Leo, it's more immediate family members. Venus and Saturn and Mars are in the seventh house. That's Mars affliction. It's called technically Mars affliction. That indicates you can end up being attracted to the wrong kinds of people, the wrong type of people. So be careful about relationship life. Sun, Mercury, and Rahu are in the eighth house. So there's a lot of interest in exploring, but you can find yourself too overwhelmed by the topic area and probably trying to address too many things at once in order to get money into your life. But you will get some money, but it will come with a lot, not with a lot of effort, but with a lot of confusion and a lot of obligation. Jupiter's in the ninth. That's not a bad placement. It's lucky Jupiter aspects the moon in this chart, so it's a good writing combination for Leo. So that's actually good. For Virgo, Virgo has K2 in the first house, so Virgo's health will be compromised somewhat. And Sun, Mercury, and Rahu are in the seventh house. That's not a bad combination, but it'll seem kind of confusing in terms of relationships and who to partner with. So probably not a good time to pick a partnership of any kind right now. Jupiter's in the eighth house, aspected by Saturn. That will limit the amount of money you'll get from inheritances or that's owed you. And Sun, Venus, and Mars, Saturn, Venus, and Mars are located in the sixth house, which indicates some struggles or some effort to improve health, and it's not going too strongly. For Libra, Libra has Jupiter in the seventh house. That's always a typically good combination for Libra, but it can make the sign a little bit overly optimistic. Saturn's in the fifth house, so again, certain things you hadn't thought about trying, you probably should try. Saturn, Mars, and Venus will give good financial opportunities, good opportunities for meeting up with new people, and finally, K2 in the 12th, good for spiritual activity, and Moon in the 11th is good for increased financial success this month and this week. For Scorpio, Scorpio has three planets in the fourth house, including the Lord of the rising sign, and that will tend to give increased status, but also kind of a dictatorial bent to the sign. Mercury, Sun, and Rahu are in the fifth house. I'm sorry, my apologies. Yes, Sun, Mercury, and Rahu are in the fifth house. So Mercury debilitated works on me too. Sun, Rahu, and Mercury are in the fifth house. So that'll make children a little bit confused about life luck with that combination. Jupiter's in the sixth house. A lot of contact with spiritual people, a lot of tendency to improve or try to improve spiritual activity and try to overcome illnesses. Sagittarius has Saturn, Mars, and Venus in the third house. So this gives the sign a great deal of courage. It gives it a lot of financial oomph. And Sun and Mercury in the fourth house will tend to make this sign feel a little bit more optimistic than it should be, probably. But it'll give it a little bit more optimism. Jupiter's in the fifth house, so that's kind of a lucky placement for this chart. That luck will fade away over the next month or so, so take advantage of it right now. And because next month will be a lot of work. Moon is in the ninth house, a very good placement for financial success and improvement of financial strategies. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Venus and Mars in the second house along with Saturn. That makes business dealings rather tough, also diplomatic, also focused more on appearances than on actual substance. So there'll be some compromises in terms of how you sell things off. Rahu, Mercury, and Sun are in the third house, so that's good for going forward with your plans. Jupiter's in the fourth house, good for education and writing. Moon is in the eighth house, so this will give a lot of interest in metaphysical or spiritual subjects. And Ketu is in the ninth, so unexpected heavy criticism from boss, but also unexpected luck. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Saturn, Mars, and Venus in the first house. This is a very powerful Raj Yoga for Aquarius in terms of career life. So they'll be pretty much able to do what they want career-wise over the next couple of months. The other thing is Rahu, Mercury, and Sun are in the second house. This is actually another good yoga in the chart, another good combination in the chart. So it'll give financial growth, especially from children and especially from past efforts. The other combination is we have Jupiter in the third house, so this sign will tend to be very diplomatic, laid back when it talks. Ketu's in the eighth house, so a lot of unexpected spiritual developments, unexpected exposure to hauntings and things like that. It's not a bad combination, but that Ketu in the eighth house looks like is something. Let me just see. Now that probably didn't make sense in terms of the chart, but Ketu in this particular sign, it makes a person want to delve more deeply. The intuition of this sign is very strong this month. So if you have a gut feeling, pay attention to it. For Pisces, Pisces has Jupiter in the second house, aspected by Saturn. So again, that's inflationary pressure. I've seen gas prices going up in my neck of the woods, definitely. Mercury, Rahu, and Sun are in the second house. So again, there's a tendency to overspend. There's a tendency to be a little bit goofily optimistic at this particular point in time. Let me say something about Leo. There may be some threats to marriage or location, just based upon what happened. And for Pisces, a lot of focus on money, a lot of focus on expenses with this combination of the 12th house. A lot of focus on health matters, especially things connected with diet. And overall, not a bad week for Pisces, not a bad month, but again, it has to be focused, it has to be clear, and in that it can't do everything at once. It absolutely can't, okay? Cannot. All right, so let's look at the map. I have a few minutes, I think, this week. And, all right, so we have Mars and Jupiter surrounding in the Hawaiian Islands. Maybe some earthquakes or tidal waves near Alaska. Government scandals still coming to the West Coast, but not immediately, not really until around April 8th. Sun is in Arizona, Utah, Idaho, and doesn't like being there. The sun doesn't like being in those particular signs. And usually the person who will benefit will be a person so if we're going back to the map, we should have some governmental scandals, some disruptions, some earth disruptions around this part of the world, government scandals in this part of the world, Mexico, between Mexico and Baja California, and also between Idaho and North and South Dakota. A lot of news coming out of Texas, that's not surprising. And Mexico, that's not surprising either. From this chart, we have a Jupiter line running straight through New York and also straight through. So let me just go on to this. So a lot of broadcast attention in those parts of the world, essentially between Canada all the way down to Mexico. The Jupiter line is going over Washington, D.C., as I said before, but there'll also be problems in the government in Cuba and in Venezuela and in Peru, Chile, and a little bit in Argentina. The Mars line is passing through Brazil right now. This will cause a lot of violence, especially down in southeastern Brazil. And in Guyana, and the Venus-Saturn line, like I said before, indicates of flux. And so if we go over here, let me just go over to this Jupiter line going through Washington, D.C. and through Cuba. So I've already spoken about that. There's a Mars line, so maybe some disruptions, maybe some air accidents in Brazil. And Venus, Saturn. Let me just see that line. Venus, Saturn, and Moon. So Brazil will be heavily in the news this week. There's a sun line coming down close to the Azores, but that really indicates government scandals more so than anything else. England has a Rahu line. England and Portugal have Rahu lines running through it. There's a sun line running through Iceland, which could indicate more volcanoes. I hope not, for their sake. But there's there's a Rahu line, a descending Rahu line, running right through England, next to Ireland, which indicates a lot more government scandals, and down through Spain and through West Africa. So that part of the world should have a lot more governmental issues. We'll hear a lot about France. We'll hear a lot about Norway and Sweden, probably until we're sick of hearing about it. And let's see now, the Jupiter line is passing up through Central Africa. But so if we go over to the Jupiter lines in pretty much the same place as it was in the map I looked at for April 8th. And we have a Mars line. So there'll be some violence in Turkey, Israel, definitely, and down into the Sudan, and all the way down the east coast of Africa. Saturn Venus line, governmental misconduct, especially connected with money. Moon line down here, a lot of activity connected with financial growth over here in Iran and Russia. And finally, we look at the Sun Rahu Mercury line over here. A lot of government scandals in these countries, in Pakistan, Afghanistan. Afghanistan, I believe, is close to collapse, or that's what people are saying. Some panic in India. A lot of news out of India as well. And finally, we have Jupiter over China and Vietnam and the Philippines. So there can't be and Indonesia, excuse me, not the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malay. And I think that what that represents is some financial growth, but restricted, not really able to take off. And Japan has a Mars line running through it again, and we're seeing these Mars lines close to Korea, Japan, and China. So I'm not saying there's going to be an attack on Japan. That's not the idea. But Japan has been militarizing a lot more lately. And Venus and Saturn are running through Australia. So there should be some kind of economic downturn there, or some kind of slowdown. And finally, we're almost there, folks. And finally, moving down to I believe it's the Marshall Islands. The moon is in the Marshall Islands, and the sun is piercing New Zealand. So again, governmental scandal is quite evident in a lot of places around the world. So you'll see most of these people being voted out. Okay. All right, so that's it for this week. I guess I ran a little bit out of steam. I hope I didn't exceed my time limit. And I'll see you next week. Again, please remember to share, like, and subscribe. And also, please leave comments. I do love to hear, to interface with you in terms of comments. I still stick by my guns for the 60s, and even the 30s were comparable times. So it's just the flavor was a bit different. But that's an open question. So in the meanwhile, I love you all. Take good care of yourselves. Find opportunities to prosper and succeed. Okay? All right. Bye-bye, everyone. See you next week.